Living the gospel transforms them. The only way all people can have the opportunity to choose or reject the gospel of Jesus Christ is for us, without judgment, to invite them to follow the Savior. This experience also taught us that we don't need to transform our relationships into friendships as a prerequisite to inviting others to learn about the gospel. Whether our platform with people is as neighbors, classmates, work associates, store clerks, or those riding on the same bus, there is no requirement to change that platform before we can invite them. Indeed, we need not and should not alter our relationships with others in order to invite them. Full-time missionaries, for example, don't wait to become friends with their contacts. They talk with everyone. A relationship of trust is built when they have the chance to teach. Over the past 20 years, we have observed no correlation between the depth of a relationship and the probability that a person will be interested in learning about the gospel. But the reverse is almost always true. Everyone who accepts an invitation to learn about the gospel becomes a closer friend, regardless of whether or not he or she ultimately accepts baptism. We have also learned that even when people decline our invitations, they are not offended, as long as they can feel our honesty, our love, and God's love when we invite them to learn about Christ's gospel. They typically have expressed gratitude that we cared enough about them to want to share something so personal and important. More often than you'd like, people say to a coworker, "Watch out, he's a Mormon." When you hear that, almost always it was caused by a member of the church who feigned friendship in the mistaken belief that we had to prepare them before we could invite them. This belief creates among many a distrust of members of our church, as if Mormons always have an ulterior motive. We must be honest, loving, and direct. These are God's ways. Despite seeing much truth and goodness in our church, the Taylors decided after 5 of the 6 lessons that they didn't want to be baptized. Even though we know that many who discontinue investigating will later listen and accept the gospel, we were disappointed. But this taught us our 3rd valuable lesson about member missionary work. We realized we had succeeded as missionaries. The Taylors had become great friends, and we had given them the opportunity to understand the gospel of Jesus Christ more deeply. Whether or not they ever enter the waters of baptism, they have taken a step along the path of their own eternal progression and have made some important, correct choices. My friend Ben told me this story that occurred as he was trying to be a better missionary. First, Clay, you say that you can't predict in advance who of all the people you'll meet is going to be interested in learning about the gospel, right? Second, as a general rule, you say that about 1 of 4 people whom you invite will say yes. This means that you'll hear no 3 times for each yes you'll hear, right? That is a hard one, because I am fragile about things like this. If I fail the first time, it is really hard for me to try again, Ben explained. Then he continued, "But I figured out how to solve this paradox. I promised the Lord that I would find someone who would say no to my invitation. That's right, someone who will say no. That is easy." Sure enough, the first person I asked said no, and I had succeeded. Finding someone to say no was a lot easier than I had thought. Ben then set a goal to find 3 additional people to say no. The next person surprised Ben by accepting. That was all it took for Ben. He learned that inviting people really is easy because you succeed when you invite, regardless of how it turns out. Nothing succeeds like success. My faith deepens every time I invite someone. This is a key reason why making a single initial invitation, like Ben did, can be so important, because it helps you feel the seed grow. As the seed grows, you begin to believe that God can actually help you find someone to hear the missionary discussions, if you will just do your part and invite. This understanding has made missionary work much easier for me. I learned this principle even more deeply a few years ago when I had a conversation with a friend at work, Wes Lambert. Wes spoke of the influence that the Mormons he had known at the Harvard Business School had had on his life. Quote, "Because of you guys, I decided it wasn't right to live with my girlfriend, so we got married. Because I saw how much happiness your children brought you, we decided to have kids. We now have 2. When I saw that your families are so important to you that you don't work weekends, I stopped working weekends too. I've even started going to temple on Saturday. But there's still one difference between you Mormons and me. It's clear that you do what you do because you love God. I'm going to church because I fear God." Close quote. I replied that he was right. We do what we do because we love God. Later that day, via email, I invited him and his wife to our home so that we could explain how we had come to know and love God. I promised Wes that he could know and love him too. A couple of days later, I saw Wes and asked if he'd be willing to do this. He thanked me very graciously for caring enough to offer, but then turned me down flat. Quote, "We're committed to the traditions of our church, and I have hope that I can find what you're offering within our tradition." Close quote. I was crushed, but in the midst of that feeling, I was filled with a very strong impression, almost as if an unseen person were standing beside me, that Jesus loved Wes Lambert. His love for Wes was completely unaffected by the fact that Wes had just rejected this opportunity to learn of him. Jesus loved Wes so deeply that he already had suffered for all of the sins that Wes might commit, in the off chance that Wes might accept him when invited to do so. This is how I know that we succeed when we invite. Moroni saw it too, as recorded in Ether chapter 12, verses 36 through 37. "And it came to pass that I prayed unto the Lord, that he would give unto the Gentiles grace, that they might have charity. And it came to pass that the Lord said unto me, If they have not charity, it mattereth not unto thee. Thou hast been faithful. Wherefore, thy garments shall be made clean." Most of us fear failure. Once we have realized that we succeed as member missionaries when we invite people to learn and accept the truth, much of the fear that kept us from sharing the gospel vanishes. We give them the opportunity to exercise their free agency. Some will use that agency to accept the gospel. Others will not, and that's fine. We succeed when we invite.